Hello. I am gonna get back to work. Still got a lot to do with all of this stats system. Alright. So let me just double check a few things. Yeah, I need to get engaged. Alright, so we got sets. What do I have to do? Well, for the social service, I've got like this party stuff, but that doesn't matter. That's going to come much later. I just wanted to get some basics going. So which part am I working on now? Well, we do need something that's going to define the active intervals. So what that's going to be is something that defines the intervals that we've got going on, and something needs to control that. So I think we need to work on the app server master system. So what I'm going to need is a new service. So it's like a base service. What we want is kind of like what we've got for our auth cache. So we want a WD- service is what we're going for, of some kind. Oh. So let's just go ahead and start making it. Trying to kind of put my screen so that maybe things are a little bit easier to read. I'm kind of out of it. I'm like, ugh, kind of in a fog. Alright, so how exactly is the master stuff going to work? The other thing I'm going to need to do is make the stats stuff all configurable. So what do I want? I want basically... Let me come with another drawing here. Actually, I'm just going to configure this to be my whole screen, because whatever. People can complain about it if they want. So let's make a new drawing here of what exactly we got going on. We don't need basic shapes, we need, yeah, basic shapes. So we have our app servers, and they're reporting to this kind of, I guess this is the platform DB. And what are we going to have in there? We're going to have a server heartbeat. And then we're going to have a master status. So what should we do for the master status? We probably want something that assumes mastery for just everything. So we could just keep this simple. We could just have a server status heartbeat, which would have the server ID. We're going to have the context. Last reported. Look at my databases. I might have already started work on this at some point, but didn't finish it, because I do have an app server master registration table, but nobody's using it. So let me take a look at this. Yeah, I've got master registration here. It looks like it's only being, the only thing that's, yeah, nothing's using it. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to have this this thread that runs, which is going to continually heartbeat to this thing. We're going to have a I guess we want the service ID to be based on the deployment ID, probably, or... Well, the master is like stuff that doesn't have to... If nothing's using this... One way for the master registration stuff to work is basically to... Like, what would our... kind of our rules around master assumption be? Would be like, read database... if there isn't a master, try to insert ourselves as the master. If there is a master, if the last heartbeat is too old, try to contact the master. So that would be like, make HTTP call to the master server, and then delete the row if no response, and then try to assume mastery. The other thing would be if we want to forward requests to the master at some point, we'd want a connection to the master, or a way to message it. We could also make an entirely separate service and worry about doing stuff later with it. Well, why don't we just keep it simple? So let's just have our server wait. So if basically the last heartbeat's too old, try to contact the master, and mastery assumption takes, let's say, 2 minutes. So heartbeats should be every 30 seconds. Cool. Alright, so what do we need to do here? Let's do our... only a thread running for our heartbeat thread. So let's throw our sleep time in here. So that should allow us to go to sleep. Okay, so for updating this guy, we are going to want to have a private, this volatile boolean is master is false, and private long last master heartbeat. Okay, so if we want to do if m is master, what we should do actually if we are not the master, then we want to call update is not master, and then we want to do if is master update master, because basically we may assume mastery and then we may then actually immediately start performing the duties of said mastery. Alright, so basically what we want to do is we'll check if last server heartbeat, yeah, so good. So let's make it 30 seconds and yeah, we'll do also a suicide button. Basically, if we cannot successfully heartbeat the database that we are still the master and we still exist, we're toast. We also want to check if we are still the master. So basically for our heartbeat, alright, so yeah, let's just do this. If we're less, then we return and do nothing. Otherwise, we're going to want to... Do we want to read the database? Yeah, we do. So we're going to need to actually grab like we have the game database here, and what is the game database? It's this game database wrapper, which has a platform client on it. So, okay, so this is the... So I'm going to change this up a little bit. So if it's been way too long since we're able to actually heartbeat this thing, we're going to have to log it out. So basically the server's going to shut itself off if it can't talk to the database for... If it can't actually do any of this stuff, it needs to stop being the master. So I'm going to have a second thread. Because we have our heartbeat, right, and that should just keep ticking along, but we might, as the master, have other things that depend on us. So I mean, I could have the app server master thing and basically have something else that actually goes and performs the master actions, such as what? What actions are we going to be performing here? Like wiping stat database stuff, or... Yeah, exactly why am I making this? For the intervals. Yeah, I'm making this for the intervals. So if we had the interval creation thing, what we're going to want to do is... Yeah, I guess we'd have like an interval thing that we'd say, oh, are we the master? If we're the master, then we should do this thing, and roll over the intervals. So we can have the pattern of having a bunch of services that basically go and they say, hey, are we still the master? Or are we the master? Then we should do this thing. Otherwise, we should just do nothing. Or should we have this guy here actually start up and control and then shut down systems that otherwise would be doing things? Because we wouldn't have to actually shut off our box if we took the tack of master server is, you know, just a thing. Anyway, I'll be right back. Yeah, I think we'll just have things that stop on this thing. So if we're unable to actually be the master in the database, then we're going to say like, you know, m is master is false. So we're going to want to delete ourselves from the database. So all right, cool. So what we want to do then is we want to write ourselves back into the database. So I guess we really don't need a check and set value if our service ID is, you know, always good. So basically what we'll want to do is I actually want to fetch this thing from here and basically read the database and make sure that it's us first. So let's see, master read. So if master read an error, unable to read master registration from DB. Okay, so if master read dot has one results equals false, I guess we should just do it this way. So master registration cur reg is master read get first. So if cur reg equals null or cur reg dot service ID, we're going to make sure it's equal. Right, so if it's null, what we should do is we should try to write to it. So if it is null, we will create a new, I'll say cur reg equals new reg, cur reg dot env equals dash levels. Let's get our context. Hello, Unix. How are you doing today? So get our service ID. We'll set our last heartbeat to now. And we will set the cast 0, and then we'll do an insert. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just setting up the app server master, which is basically just we're using the database, and one of the X number of servers is going to be the master server. And the master server is just going to run some light operations that we need to only happen once, such as rolling over intervals for like weekly, daily, monthly, whatever scores, and all that stuff. So simple stuff that isn't really going to be processor intensive, but we need one place, one thread in the whole server cluster that will, actually just go pick up that task. So we're just writing the stuff to write to the database, to register as the master, and all that. Nothing too incredibly complicated. Alright, so if our insertion was successful, then our last master heartbeat is right now, and we go ahead and return. We're good to go. Otherwise, if the registration is not null, then we need to check. The service ID. Don't stay for long. You woke up in the middle of the night, you're falling to sleep. Ah, man. Waking up too early can just suck really bad. It's just like you wake up and you're like, I'm still kind of tired, but I can't like go back to sleep right now. It's like, it's the worst. Alright, so basically what's going on is we read from the database, and the database came back and said, hey, yeah, we have a master server. It's not you. It's like, oh shit. So we need to say master is false and get out of there. So we'll also print out a warning here, because this shouldn't happen. We thought we were the master, but someone else took it? Possibly awful. So print that out as an error, not just a warning. Okay, so otherwise what we're going to do is we want to take this cur_reg here and just do cur_reg dot last heartbeat equals system per type millis, and we will do a so I've already got autogen for a lot of standard database operations for all this stuff. So this like update an app server master registration check and set is something that I generated, just which does like the check and set stuff. And what it will do is it's actually going to go through and it should set our, it's going to set our check and set value to +1 from what it is and check that it's the previous one. So we don't have to go write all that database query stuff because we already generated all of it. GameMaker Studio 2, it's surprisingly good. Yeah, I think a lot of those are probably pretty decent stuff. I have not done anything with GameMaker, so I can't say anything about it other than I know, like what, Charles Barkley, Shut Up and Jam Gaiden is made in GameMaker, and then Shut Up and Jam Gaiden 2 is in GameMaker as well, but like the reason they've been trying to ship that game for like 10 years is because like they had tons of problem with Game Maker. I don't even know if they're using Game Maker Studio 2 or whatever like new thing. I think they're on the old one, so bad news bears. Alright, so we're going to set our last heartbeat to now. And return. So we successfully heartbeated that we are the master, checked everything, we're good. So that will do the things. As long as you understand the limitations, it can do neat stuff. Yeah, I think the other thing I would watch out for is if it has good debugging capability. I think the thing that I remember is that if there are like performance problems and leaks or something, it can be difficult to track down exactly why. But I don't know. I found with a lot of those systems, like you can work inside the engine and make something that works inside of whatever it is, or you can just spend your entire time fighting against it and trying to push it to do things that it doesn't want to do, and it just is a recipe for disaster. Alright, so every 30 seconds, we're going to do this last master check. Yeah, okay, so if... do this. Maybe do a game prototype and then use a regular game engine to do the actual game. Yeah, that's a real common thing to prototype out in whatever you're most familiar with, and then do the game inside of an actual engine later. I'm scattered today. Ugh. Okay, so what do we want to do? So we are not the master. We need to read the database and see who is the master. Let's do that. Testing gameplay idea. It's kind of a fine line there, though. Like, that's something that's very difficult, especially at larger corporations, is to make prototypes properly. Like, I know a lot of studios I've been at, they've tried to do prototypes, and what'll end up happening is the prototype will then become like the project, and everything's based on it, and it's like, you know, building on a house of cards, and things are awful. Okay, so get from at master registration by environment. So we'll fetch our environment. So we'll snag this thing. You have a gameplay idea, but you never saw it implemented, so test it in as little time as possible. Yeah, definitely. The other thing that sometimes can work is just doing like a paper prototype with a few people. I've seen that be pretty effective. Where if you've got like it especially works for games which don't have a hell of a lot of like calculations. or it can actually help distill those that do have complex calculations and systems. But actually, like sitting down with like pieces of paper and playing what would be the actual game can be pretty fun, and also fix a bunch of design issues. All right, so okay, so if the current registration is null, then we're gonna try to assume the master. And what I should do here is I should actually turn this into a function just so I don't screw it all up. Alright, so this is going to be slogger.info, successfully assumed app server mastering. A shoot 'em up RPG. Alright. Shoot 'em up with RPGs. Shouldn't be hard, but is it good? Who knows? Well, I mean, Borderlands is built on that sort of premise, and so is. Well, I mean, a shoot 'em up. No, that's like a bullet hell game with RPG elements. Let me see. I have definitely played RPG based shoot 'em up games. Like, God, what was that old thing? Shit. There was this one game back in the 90s that I played on my computer, which it was basically you were a fighter plane in some war, and you went on these missions, and they were, like you're bombing stuff and blowing the hell out of everything, and you would get money, and you would spend that money to upgrade your plane and get better weapons and all sorts of stuff, and, so instead of like R-Type or something else where you're just collecting pickups on the board, you'd actually like pick up the money and then go spend the money in the shop and upgrade your plane and all stuff like that. And it was pretty cool, but damn, it was hard. That may have also, the difficulty may have had something to do with me being like, 10. Yeah, R-Type, definitely. I've beaten that game. Let's see. But yeah, that could definitely work. I think there have been some shoot 'em up games like that have RPG elements, but it's not nearly as common, and I'm trying to think about why. Usually because the levels are pretty strict. Like, one of the things is that a lot of the shoot 'em up genre is also about memorization, like just like Ikaruga or whatever, right? You're going to be, one of the big things about it is that you memorize all the things and the timing, and you get good at swapping and doing all that crap. And also, music is super important, and kind of the flow. And if you had an RPG in there, like RPGs are usually built around grinding and improvement, and the opposite of memorization, right? You might memorize like, oh, this spell is most effective against lightning. Use lightning on machines, and use fire against ice, and ice against fire, and whatever the hell. You memorize, you know, like moves, but you don't. So an RPG and shoot 'em up mechanics kind of conflict with each other in some of those respects. But the RPG mechanics could allow you to guide your own playstyle, such as I'm a player, I want to, you know, I want to use homing missiles a lot more, so I'm going to level those up and focus on that, and then I want to select the, like, you know, blink ability so I can get away from things that are going to blow me the hell up. So I'm trying to think. That's an interesting problem, definitely. But I don't know. I probably wouldn't try to make that game. But then again, maybe that's why it there hasn't been that amazing one that is like, yeah, that game. Fuck, I can't believe everybody made games similar, but they never actually thought to try it. Horseless carriage. What? What is this? Oh. Who wants to drive around in a noisy, stupid-ass automobile anyway? What's that, you know? If Henry Ford asked people what they'd want, they'd say faster horses. Alright. Alright, so we'll grab our registration. If the registration is null, we'll try to assume the master. Otherwise, we want to check if the... we've got what now is, so if current reg, that last heartbeat, it's going to be now minus this, is greater than the suicide. And maybe we shouldn't have suicide, maybe we should have the private static, master, server, to TTL. Took too long. So let's just add a minute to that. So because it'll try to delete itself, so that's fine. And we want this master server TTL. Took too long. Alright, so just say slug info, current server master didn't exist, attempting to assume server mastery. Current server, current master hasn't reported, and so what we'll do here is we will try to delete this row from the database. So we'll do SQL client delete from we'll try to delete this thing, but we're going to pass in the entire thing for it. So we're going to pass in the cur reg. So that'll match the heartbeat, the service ID, the check-in set, and the environment. So it has to be the exact matching row. You have 400 games in your Steam library? Only 400? How do you live with yourself? That's so few. Okay, so if we successfully delete it, then what we're going to try to do is try to assume mastery and then return. You have 36? Well, that's how it goes. Okay, so the current master wasn't too old, and we aren't it, and we checked it, and it's all online, and everything's fine. So, everything's good. So the reason we're trying to delete it and then we're trying to insert it is basically because we need to do an insert call here for this guy, and we want to fail. So we're not doing like a replace into, we're doing an insert into sort of thing. Alright, so we'll make these guys configurable later. Alright, this guy also need to make our registry functions. Too many Humboldt bundles. So PvP, spaceship, top row versus bottom row, Super Smash Bros. Arena style. Starting a game with online multiplayer isn't a good idea. The mechanic must work solo before messing up with multiplayer. That's actually something that we've been kind of knocking around with our game, has been that for it to be a multiplayer game, you have to have enough people actually playing the game to make the game playable, right? Like, you can't just have a multiplayer game and expect people to be able to, nobody can play it if nobody's online. And if nobody's online, what's the incentive to boot up the game at all and just like sit there and wait, right? So that's kind of one of the things we're thinking about right now, is that we have a bit of a problem with some of that with our title, and we've got stuff in the works to fix that. So we'll be working on it. It's kind of like that with a lot of Steam games you have, yeah. Multiplayer only and no player around. Yeah, that'll do it. So we're definitely one way you can do it is by putting in asynchronous multiplayer. So asynchronous multiplayer is being able to compete against other people offline. So that would be, like a high score table is an example of an asynchronous multiplayer feature, or something like challenging a player, such as, like Mario Maker is asynchronous multiplayer because you can make a level and then somebody else can play it. That's, or like Luigi's Balloon Challenge or whatever the hell that game that just came out. Those are all asynchronous multiplayer. It can work real well. Because then people will actually be online, and then from there you can kind of do stuff. All right, so we have master registration. The app server globals, we're also going to want Let's make a is app master. So let's do like a get vars s app master. So if the master is null, return false. Otherwise, return master. Are we master? On some free-to-play where you can attack a player base where he's offline, yeah, on the base. That's like every free-to-play mobile game. I think it was Clash of Dinner, or something along those lines, or Dinner of Clans. Let's see. We're also going to want to edit our configs to allow this thing to start up. We need configs for this. We also need to actually write our interval stuff. So we should go to our stats, and let's go to our, let's just make a package called intervals, and let's do our wd stats master service. All right, yeah, okay, why don't we just rename this from intervals to master, make this a service that we do stuff with. It's going to check if it's the master when it wakes up, and then it'll do processing stuff. So we'll kind of have this be a little loose in how it actually couples together, but it should be fine. Somebody must be hungry. Nah, I'm not that hungry. I ate some sushi earlier, but it really wasn't very good, so nothing worse than bad sushi. Actually, there are plenty of things worse than that.